Whatever he's planning has to have her in mind, and we need to stop it. But first, a few completely unrelated side quests. Hi everyone, I'm your favorite Catboy, and before I start this video, I want to say that this is a continuation of my last video which detailed the main story for Wizard101. This video is only covering 2 side quests, those being Colossus Boulevard and Crab Alley. So that video isn't required to understand this video, but I still worked really hard on it, and the information in that video is going to be a bit more relevant to the main plotline than this video is. So if you haven't watched that yet, I recommend you do. You don't have to though, I'm not your dad. Also, for anybody who's watching this that doesn't play Wizard101, I just want to say that while the main story of Wizard101 is relatively kind of serious and dark, this does not apply to these 2 side quests in particular, so this video isn't going to be nearly as serious as the first video. If that's not your thing, you're free to click off, go watch my other video again or something, I won't be mad. And with all that out of the way, let's head to Colossus Boulevard. This street has a similar story to Cyclops Lane, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. There used to be a big problem with undead on the street, so the ice professor Lydia Greyrose was called in to help. She tried summoning an army, but instead accidentally summoned a horde of gobblers. You know, like you do. The gobblers began eating everything in sight, and in an attempt to remedy the situation, she summoned an army of snowmen. But they weren't much help either. As a last resort, Headmaster Ambrose locked the street, preventing any students from entering. But after what we did for the first 3 streets, Ambrose thinks we can help with this one. We talked to Private O'Doyle, who is guarding Colossus Boulevard. As he lets us in, he asks us to check on his niece, Mindy Pixiecrown. She was doing research for a school project in the area, but that research has been put to a halt thanks to the gobbler infestation. Mindy asks us to defeat some of the evil snowmen on the street to see if that will drive them back, but it doesn't. Mindy then sends us to Professor Greyrose to see if she has a solution. Greyrose gives us a recipe for a potion that might curb the gobbler's appetite. Unfortunately, it has no effect on the gobblers. We're not entirely out of options though, because luckily for us, the gobblers have a monarchy. So plan C is to reason with the Gobbler King, who completely ignores any attempts at reasoning and instead decides to rename the street to New Gobblerton. Nice. He asks us to surrender, giving us a royal decree, which is just crayon drawings of ice cream and chicken, which we must give to Headmaster Ambrose. Headmaster Ambrose has us duel some gobblers to gauge how much of a threat they really are before giving us a letter to give to Mindy. The letter details a plan that we have to carry out. We must duel the king's closest advisors, Baron Greebly and Baron Rotunda. After defeating them, we go back to see the king, who doesn't believe we had the strength to defeat them until one of his men interrupts our conversation in a panic, saying that the 2 barons have been defeated by a student wizard. This immediately changes the king's tune, and he asks for us to spare him and the rest of the gobblers. He explains that their old home was full of witches and they're scared to go back. They wish to have a truce with Wizard City. If they're allowed to stay in Colossus Boulevard, then they promise they won't eat as much. We report back to Headmaster Ambrose, and with that out of the way, we can head straight to... Oh no. Okay, so... confession time. While I love Wizard101, and I think that for the most part the story is very cool and solid, I cannot say I'm a fan of Crab Alley. And I wanted to say that now instead of later because, oh boy. This questline is a lot, and I cannot guarantee I'll get through all of it without getting at least a little bit annoyed, okay? Alright. So, the deal with Crab Alley is that it's located below Triton Avenue. In Triton Avenue, magical lightning is collected and stored in tunnels near Crab Alley, but something's gone wrong and the storm mill is in danger or something. I'll be honest, I lost the footage of Sahomer explaining all of this, and for that I am sorry. But anyways, it's up to us to go down to Crab Alley and see what's wrong. So we drink a water-breathing potion and just throw ourselves into the river. Once we're in Crab Alley, we're greeted by Herman, who explains that something's up with their king, because like the gobblers, the crabs also have a monarchy. King Thermidor had just returned from his world tour to find that there was a breach in the river wall that separates the Crab Kingdom from the Riverclaw Kingdom. Riverclaws are like the enemies of the crabs. When Thermidor went to check it out, he came back with a bunch of Riverclaws and has been acting strange ever since. Riverclaws now run the town, but Herman directs us to someone who might be able to help. Sir Thomas Cromshell was the king's most trusted advisor, but after a falling out with the king, he was thrown into the White Tower. After beating up some Riverclaws and getting the key to this tower, Thomas explains that he was thrown in here after offering the king advice, and asks us to see Captain Jonah, who might be able to sort this whole mess out. Unfortunately, Captain Jonah is of no help and tries to arrest us when we get to him because we're breaking a curfew that's been put in place. After resisting arrest, we go back to Thomas to figure out what to do now. Thomas has a feeling the Riverclaws are behind all this somehow, but he can't do much to help seeing as he's locked in a cage. We beat up more Riverclaws in an attempt to find whoever holds the key, and we're informed that the king actually holds the key to Thomas's cage. We go to see the king, but he's taking no visitors until he's had his snack of tea and crumpets, which, according to Thomas, is incredibly weird for the king. Nonetheless, we're sent to Catherine, the head cook, to see if we can give the king what he wants. Catherine knows the king better than anyone, and is relieved that she's not the only one who noticed him acting strangely. She's seen firsthand that something's wrong with the king, but instead of trying to explain what's wrong, she really thinks we need to see it for ourselves. She has the tea and crumpets ready, but the Riverclaws stole the crumpets, so we have to get them back before going to see King Thermidor. Once we enter the castle, we meet King Thermidor, who actually looks totally fine and normal. Just kidding. As it turns out, King Thermidor has been replaced by an imposter. More specifically, King Amadeo of the Riverclaws, who we later find out is an old rival of King Thermidor's. We go back to Thomas with our findings, and Thomas tells us that we have to go through the river wall to find the king ourselves. Once we get through, we meet Captain Roderick, who's there fighting Riverclaws. He came here with King Thermidor, but the two were shortly separated. Roderick knows that the king is still here somewhere, so he's just gonna wait for us to retrieve him. It's fine. We beat up even more Riverclaws until one of them confesses that the king is being held in the Alcazar in the depths of the Wailing Cavern. We then spend a good chunk of time going back and forth between scouting out the Alcazar and reporting our findings to Captain Roderick, who's on the other side of the map. This isn't really plot relevant, but it does drive me insane. We find a secret entrance to the Alcazar, but it's too dark to navigate, so we have to collect these glowfish to light our way. As we make our way through the tunnel, we find that the king is here. He's getting ready for some sort of concert and is oblivious to the happenings in Crab Alley. Also, he sounds like this.
Great to see you! It's always good to meet a fan. I met King Amadeo, and he asked me to perform for him soon.
Once we tell him what's happened, he explains that he can't leave because his guards are missing and the telluric eels in the area are incredibly aggressive and won't allow him to leave safely. We rescue the guards, and one says that this whole problem was started by a super smart science guy who was messing with a storm battery. That's where the magical lightning from the beginning of the quest is stored. King Thermidor doesn't know where the guy might be, but he was warned to stay away from something called a storm chamber backstage. When we get there, we see
an electrified gate. Someone doesn't want you getting inside.
An electrified gate! Someone doesn't want you getting inside!
We're able to get through the fence by getting some telluric eels and using them to short it out. Once we get inside, we meet Dr. Zygmunt, the scientist who's been tampering with storm batteries in an attempt to lead the Riverclaw Kingdom into an industrial revolution or something. Honestly, I forgot that those storm batteries were a thing up until this point because I was too caught up in the other plot, but anyways. We knock some sense into Dr. Zygmunt, who admits that he may have gone mad with power, and didn't realize his experiments were messing up Triton Avenue this badly. He'd love to fix everything, but he's missing a few things. Pieces of the storm battery got swept up by the current and are scattered all over the place, and he fed some lightning seeds that he needs to the telluric eels, which explains why they're electrified and hostile. It's up to us to grab the storm battery pieces and the lightning seeds and put together the storm battery while Zygmunt watches, and with that solved, we can go back to Crab Alley and stop this once and for all. We return to the castle and call Amadeo out for being an imposter. Seeing that the jig is up, he makes us fight him. We win, and King Thermidor is restored to the throne. He's amazed that we recognized Amadeo as an imposter, and we explain that it was all thanks to Catherine, who saw through his disguise in the first place. King Thermidor wants to show his gratitude for Catherine, so he has us write a romantic poem for her and then walk all the way over to her house to read it to her.
You take out the poem and begin to read.
Oh, in my darkest times away from this place, you were my light, my beacon, my grace. Though I paid you no heed, you stayed loyal in time of need. Your claws how dainty as they mold your sweet tarts. Your kindness has cracked this crab shell apart.
Catherine loves it, and we walk all the way back to the castle to give the king her gratitudes. And with all that done, the story of Crab Alley concludes with us reporting back to Sahomar Sunblade and getting this sick new outfit. And that's it. That's Colossus Boulevard and Crab Alley. If you made it this far into the video, I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in. I know I ragged on Crab Alley a bit, but it's honestly just really fun to like write and talk about due to its sheer ridiculousness compared to the rest of the plot. Speaking of the rest of the plot, my next video is going to be jumping back into the main storyline, and we're going to be covering Crocotopia next, and I'm really excited for that one. Until then, though, this is your favorite Catboy, and I am signing off. Bye!
And dance to my new hit single, Round and Round. Do you have what it takes to be a wizard?